Cloud. All right. Okay, so this will take maybe 1 hour. Let's see. Feel free to ask questions anytime. I put this together rather quickly, so there might be some errors and stuff, but let's try to go through this. So last time I was talking about endurance training, and now we are moving to speed. So fast movements. You have a couple of pictures here. The first one is baseball player, and they use this baseball bat. And in that sport, it's quite important to have very high batting speed, because then the baseball flies faster and longer, making it harder to catch. So there's been lots of research on that. And the other one, slightly different, is sprinting. It might be the fastest sport, has the fastest movements probably in any sport. So 5 steps per second, something like that. So, and it's also been researched quite well. So there is no guesswork how this goes actually. Of course, we are doing SCA fighting, but many of the movements are similar, if not completely the same. You can find speed being discussed, but also velocity, rate of force development, explosive strength, and the engineering dudes, they want to talk about acceleration. But it's pretty much all the same. I'll be using speed. It's commonly used, although it actually doesn't mean much. So let's go on. Let's see if this works. Right, so here we are. So this is the overall structure of my lecture series. So we are now here at the fast movements. And if you repeat those fast movements, then we are talking about endurance. That was already discussed before. So let's see what this means. Later on, I'll be talking about how to train technical skills, range of motion, and the tactics and techniques for fighting for a certain style to give you the full package. But we need to discuss what is speed in SCA fighting. I put in some definitions from my point of view. First one is the ability to strike, parry, and move quickly enough, a little bit vague. And the second one is the ability to keep the desired timing during a fighting bout. So it's not only absolute speed, it's also relative to your opponent or opponents. You can be too fast, depending on what kind of techniques are you using. But you can also be too slow. And I'll discuss this a little bit more in detail later. Question is, speed for what kind of a fight? The same question is, of course, endurance for what kind of a fight. So it's really specific on some factors. Let's see what those are. But in practical terms, maybe if you have tried swinging different sticks or even just your arm, maybe if you have tried different kinds of shields, and maybe even different sets of armor, or maybe you have done belt training without armor and then you have been sparring in armor, you might find out that there are differences. It's more difficult to move when in armor. It's not that you get exhausted, you also move slower. And if you have a heavy stick and a long stick, it's more difficult to move it, and the end result is that it will move slower than a light one. And if you look at the fastest fighters, they wear very little to no armor. And their sticks are usually on the short side. So what I typically use is 1 meter long, even slightly longer. So really long sticks, but some people use a lot shorter ones. So those are faster. So if you want to get speed, you need to go light. That's the first thing. I'll explain why. Then a couple of other things. Maybe you have done slow work, so slowly done all the techniques, maybe some pill work. And if you then try to hit very fast something, you can feel that they're different kind of movements. There is a reason for it. And you can also maybe feel that if you try to move something slowly, you are using a different kind of muscle speed compared to if you want to go full speed. Because with high speed movements, the muscles fire very quickly and only for a short time. So they are not typically on for the longest time. But what's really going on here? And why speed is important in SCA fighting? I have heard people talking, oh, speed is not important, forget about it. And sometimes those fighters are the fastest ones on the planet who say that. And I'm like, okay, so why are you fast then? The simple reason is, this might be a Chinese saying, speed is the only technique against which there is no counter. So this is the reason. If you are really fast, if you are faster than your opponent, you will win. Everything else being the equal, then you will win. So that's why high-speed movements are crucial if you want to win a fight without cheating. And reference speed, let's say for a stick strike, this is what I've been looking in some videos I'll find from YouTube. Also, I checked myself. So from a standstill position, nothing is moving. The time it takes for the stick to reach out and connect with the target, for advanced fighters, it seems to be about 0.3 seconds. And for intermediates like me, it's about 0.3 to 0.5, depending on a little bit on the conditions. And beginners, they typically have a strike speed more than 0.5 seconds. So an advanced fighter can be twice as fast as a beginner. And that's a lot. And this doesn't only apply to strikes, it does also apply to parries and movement. But we need to ask that, do we have to train ourselves for the 0.3 second level? That depends on what kind of fight are we going to do. And I would say the answer is both yes and no. And it depends on your fighting style, the technical style you will apply in a fight. Okay, this is modern art. I try to explain this. So from top down in the middle, there is time. So the time goes from top down. And at certain point in time, we have fighter A and fighter B. One of them strikes, and then the other one parries. And the semicircles here just mean that when A strikes, fighter A strikes, it takes some time for the fighter A to complete the strike. So the A completes the strike when the semicircle is done. It's a little bit like a swing, really. And at the same time, B will try to parry, and takes time to parry also. Point being is that if the strike time for A is about the same as the parry time for B, this will end up in a ping pong match. On the upper right corner is a picture drawn by me. So this is the typical situation. One fighter strikes, the other one parries, and then they switch roles. So the one who parried will strike, and then the other one will parry, and then they switch roles once again. So it's this kind of back and forth. Here in Aarimetsä, we call this rhythm play. it's usually done in a warm-up, but in a fight, it's really of no use. So you both have the same speed, same timing, and you end up parrying your other guy's shots. And the one who tires up first loses. So this is not how you fight, but it's still possible that this kind of situation can happen in a real fight. Okay, so that's how we start. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to draw better pictures for this, but this is what I could do in my limited time. Then we have something I call speed style 1. And in this style, fighter A has faster striking speed. So it means that the fighter A can start and complete the strike in shorter time than the fighter B can fully complete the parry. So the time difference here, the time window below the picture on the upper right corner, time window is where the fighter B can be hit, because his or her parry is still underway, and there is the small time window that you can sneak your stick in. And this is the kind of advantage you get if you can strike faster than your opponent can parry. This is quite common. There are no tricks here, no feinting yet. We'll go to those a little bit later. So if you're the fighter A, you might win the fight. It's not certain, but it's a likelihood, because when the B strikes, and if you can parry the B's strike at the same time, it takes for the B to complete the strike, you are okay, because you can parry pretty much all the strikes coming in at you. And then you can have another go. You're slightly faster. You once again have a small time window where you can hit your opponent. And this is how the fight goes. So if you're starting off, I would say try to improve your stick speed first. It helps you to hit your opponent, no matter what your technique is, because you're just faster. It makes it more difficult for your opponent to parry. Make sense? Hope so. Okay, let's see what happens then. The next step, speed style number 2, is that the fighter A has faster strikes, but also faster parries. So we still have the same time window here on the top, but then, so let's say the fighter B can parry a strike, even though the A strikes quite quickly, and then the B switches to a strike. Because the A is so quick also in the parries, the fighter A can interrupt the B strike mid-air, mid-flight. So B is not even able to complete the strike. So this means that the B strike is not, it's interrupted before it has any chance to contact the fighter A. And please remember, the parry here can mean like a parry with the shield, parry with the stick, or maybe even some stepping movement away from the strike. It doesn't matter. So I'm using parry in a very wide sense here. Okay, so fighter B is really disappointed. So he got interrupted. Maybe you have had something like this happening during a fight. It's quite common. But now, because fighter A is also a fast striker, he or she can start a strike quite quickly. So immediately when fighter A has neutralized B strike, fighter A can switch to attack. And B is still doing his own strike. It's still like, it's being stopped currently, but B hasn't started the parry yet. So the time window for fighter A to hit fighter B is now bigger. So this is the kind of advantage you get when you also train parrying speed. It's really your choice. If you want to first train parrying or striking, it really doesn't matter much, but it's a good idea then, no matter what you pick to train first, train then also the other one. Because it will increase the time window in which you can hit your opponent. And so it goes. So this is quite common kind of a fight. I would say for intermediate fighters. So you are not waiting for your opponent's strike to land. You start the evasion or parry already when his or her strike goes. So it's a little bit more difficult to do. You have to be faster. If you are not fast enough, you can't do this. You can't interrupt anything in mid-flight. Okay, so these were the cases where speed helps. But what if we are just slow? So no matter what we do, we can't anymore improve our strikes or parries or movement, and our opponents are about the same speed as we are. Okay, then we have to think about fighting in a style I call fraction. So it's like offbeat style. And in this style, so we are still talking about timing, no matter what your techniques are, but we are talking about timing. I'll explain. So we have the fighter A and fighter B once again, but they have the same speed of movements. But fighter A is a little bit more clever because this fighter has found techniques which enable him to start a counterattack while his parry is being done. So this means that you will start parrying, but you will start your counterattack at the same, almost at the same time. It takes a little bit later. So this means that these semicircles, blue semicircles of A parry, A strike, they slide towards each other. But the parry of A still takes the same time as the parry of B, and also the striking time of fighter A is the same as the striking time of fighter B. The fighter A just is more clever, and because of the technical repertoire, technical choices he or she uses here, fighter A can compress the parry and attack in a smaller time space. So this means once again that we have a larger time window where fighter A can hit fighter B. And this is a little bit advanced fighting style. On the upper right, you can see a picture once again drawn by me. This is from actual fight. So I was the guy on the right having a center grip, and my opponent was having a heater shield, and he just came in and decided to hit me with an onside to the head. My original position was that I was having the shield low, so next to my knee, and also the sword down. So I like fully open. So what I just did is I lifted my shield, and slightly later I lifted my sword for a thrust. And this is the end result. So it was this timing what I'm showing here with this blue semicircles. So I hit my opponent to the face with the thrust quite easily. And he could have parried my thrust, but there was very little time to do it because his strike was still on its way when I already started mine. So in this style, you don't have to be very fast. You can even be a little bit slower than your opponent. The only critical thing is that your parry has to be fast enough so that you can parry your opponent's strike. And then you chain in your own strike or thrust. So hope you can get this. This is quite important. And if you look into any advanced stuff related to any kind of fighting, it starts to be like this. And of course, if on top of this you are also quite fast, this becomes much more easier. But like I was saying, you can be too fast. So it doesn't make any sense for me to parry with my shield until the right moment. And it doesn't make any sense for me to trust my opponent until the right moment because he's not open. So I will have to watch for the correct timing. And all this happens in about 0.4 seconds, the whole thing, which makes this stuff what we do really difficult. But it's quite easy to train for this if you know what we are doing. Later on, maybe after summer, I will explain how to train this kind of stuff. Everybody can do it, I think, unless you burden yourself with heavy armor. But my armor was weighing maybe 34 kilos, so 70 pounds here. So still it works. Okay, then we go for the next one. So this is like fraction style once again, but this is completely advanced stuff in that the fighter A has now optimal technique. So the timing, what he is now using is that the parry and strike are simultaneous. So on the upper right corner, you can see one example. It's a little bit Chinese technique, but the idea is that your opponent will, for example, give you an onside to head or thrust to your face or something like that. And what you do, you just lift your shield, and at the same time you cut the arm of your opponent. This is bread and butter move in some styles. And you can do the parry and the strike exactly at the same time. It makes even sense biomechanically. Your shield is moving like from low to high, a little bit backwards, and your sword is coming from high to low. So it's biomechanically also quite good technique. It's really fast, even if you're wearing heavy armor and a heavy shield and heavy sword. This works very well with very heavy center grip shield as well. So this is what you want to have ultimately. And then if you're really, really fast, you can even strike your opponent, hit your opponent before you parry. That's also possible, but the idea is the same, but then your opponent has to be slower than you. So even when you sense that your opponent is striking, you are already striking back. So you strike, then you parry, and then you strike again. But it's super advanced. I haven't seen many people doing that in SCA, maybe not anybody. But this is quite common. So this is like single timing, some people call it. And if you really want to be good, this is probably the kind of fighting style you need to train for. And the good news is that you don't have to be very fast. This works very well as a counter fighter style. So you get your opponent to commit for this kind of a headshot, for example, and then you capitalize on that. You make a counter technique and kill him. So, okay, to summarize, the time window here is quite large. It's really large. And you want to maximize this time window. So that's one way to look at fighting. So you want to create time. You are creating time for your strike to hit. That's the whole idea. There are many ways to do it. I'll just briefly touch feints. So feinting, in the same idea, what does it do? So you feint, and then your opponent commits to parry, but it's incorrect parry. So your opponent has to reset. And while your opponent is still doing the incorrect parry, you start the real strike. And then you create this time window once again, where your opponent's parry is late. So you have created time for your actual strike to hit home. So this is feinting. But the risk of feinting is, so instead of B doing the wrong parry, and then trying to do the correct parry in time. If he does only the wrong parry and then switch to striking, there comes a problem because then B will create a time window where he can hit you. So it's when the B strike is completed, but because you did your own, your parry is late. And this is the risk of feinting. You don't have to understand this fully, but just a concept. So feinting, you can do it, but be aware it's a little bit risky if your opponent, when you are doing the feint, if he decides to strike you at the same time. So that's why this is the optimal case. Okay, that's theory. So now a little bit about the fighting styles. I don't know. Question for you. Have you been discussing this at all in any of your practice sessions or anywhere? It's okay to say no.
We've been working on, or I've been working on some drills that are about the striking and blocking at the same time, or at least overlapping.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
From my point of view.
It's definitely helpful when it works. It works.
Yes, good. Okay, so let's discuss what affects speed. The stuff I'm showing here on the screen is coming from, this is well known, so from exercise physiology, from baseball, sprinting, you name it, fast movements. So on the left-hand side, there are a few things which will be defined by your fighting gear and fighting style. The movement techniques, what you will be using, will affect how fast you can be. Definitely. Usually shorter movements are faster, but not always. But it's like the complexity or what kind of things you want to do in your fight. Are you keeping your elbows close to your body or spreading those out? Anything can work, and we are all different. So there is no right or wrong way, but there are things you can optimize if you want to get high speed. So then pick high speed style. There is Branos, there is Sean, and those styles are, I would say, high speed styles in one way. They are also quite high power, but then you can have a less power style with even higher speed if you want. But we haven't seen many of those guys in the SCA. They're usually coming from the Filipino martial arts school, and they don't necessarily extend that much the swords. So the strikes are shorter and the parries are also shorter, and so they fight quite close. And then you can be super fast if you want to be like that. Then of course one big thing is the weight of your armor, shield, stick, and also the length of your sword, because the longer it is, the slower it will be. And this is coming from physics, because we are after high acceleration or rate of force development. So we want to go from 0 to 100 as fast as possible. So we have to produce force. This is coming from our muscles as quickly as possible, and then we want to minimize the mass in order to maximize the little a letter here, which is the acceleration. Then you are fast. So if you overload yourselves with heavy armor, you can still be fast, but you have to be able to produce more force. So that's the reason why people are wearing light armor, light sticks. There is one downside to having a light stick or short stick. It's more difficult to score a good hit. So you need to think that what's the minimal level of energy you need to be able to get out, and then go as light stick and as short stick as possible. Then if you want to be fast, of course you lose some reach. So that you said, depending on what you choose. Then on the right hand side, this yellow box is what you can train. Of course, you can train movement techniques as well, but it's more like skill thing, not selection of the techniques. So obviously, muscles are needed. If you don't have any muscles, you are not going to be fast. But how much muscles? So you don't have to be a power lifter, no way. If you look at the historical sword fighters from the 19th century, those old photographs, if you look at some of the existing ones from HIMA community or SCA, if you read old texts, well, if you look at those Filipino super fast dudes swinging sticks like what we do, they are quite thin usually. They don't have too much muscle on their body. So there is a reason for it. So you need some muscle, but then you have to train your muscles to be fast. So we are not lifting like the heaviest weight what you can lift. That's not helpful if you want to be fast. I'll also explain why. So if you are training for maximum strength like this powerlifting or whatever, it's of no use in high-speed movements, unfortunately. It's more important to get some muscle size. Then there is one box about muscle tendon stiffness. So tendons are the ones that are connected to the muscle. If they're really flexible, they're like rubber bands. And it's really difficult to produce a lot of force. This would be a special topic for later. It does play a role also from a safety point of view, because if you go straight into high-speed training without training your tendons and ligaments first, you might end up in a big trouble, which means break yourself. Has happened to many new fighters and also some older ones. But then the third box is movement technical efficiency or skill level. This is totally trainable, but it has to be trained in the right way, and it will help to achieve high-speed movements. But the most important ones are within the red boxes. So muscle activation, the firing threshold. So this means that how fast can you engage your muscle to full speed. And the other one is the command system, which gives the muscle the command to contract. And this comes to your brain through the nervous system. So you have the nerves, which is the wiring, bringing the signal. If those don't work, your muscles are not going to be contracting very quickly. And then you have the motor units, the muscles themselves. So these red boxes are the ones you really want to train first. Everything after you have those muscles, the hypertrophy in place, after you have trained the tendon stiffness, and after you have had good enough technical efficiency with the movements, then you concentrate on this muscle activation and nervous system impulse. Okay, I'll be discussing this in a little bit more detail. Before that, some things to know. This is how humans work. So on one axis, the y-axis, we have force produced by your muscles and stuff. And on the x-axis, there is velocity or speed. And it goes like this. So if you are lifting a very heavy weight, you can't lift that very fast. But you can produce a lot of force. And the opposite is also true. If you are moving a very light weight, you can move that very quickly. And there are two reasons. First is physics. So once again, the mass will affect how fast you can accelerate something. But the other one is that the muscles in the human body cannot produce very high force with very high speed at the same time. So, okay, somebody from sports doing a shot put. So this is this cannonball they throw. I think the speed of that cannonball is about the same as our stick strike. But if you look at the guy, he's quite massive. And that cannonball still, it's considered relatively lightweight or medium weight. And our sticks weight much, much less. So this is good to know. It's something that, I don't know, it's just from physics and biology, and that's the way it is. So it's two things. But this does have some serious implications on how we should select stick weights and stuff. Because I won't go into physics here, but power or the intensity or performance or capability, it's like how hard the strike from the stick is, how hard it hits. It's somewhere in the middle. So the green curve maximum is the highest striking power you can get out from you. But it's also most physically taxing because it's high power. It's like the light bulb operating at 1000 watts or something. That's power. So this is the same power. So you will tire very quickly, and it's always a trade-off in between force and speed. So if you want to have really high power, hard-hitting shot, it's not going to be the fastest shot you can throw, unfortunately. So therefore, peak power is only needed in some sports, for example, track cycling. So we have powerlifting, so these kind of things, when you really have to get a heavy implement, some heavy-ish object you are pushing against, or what you are throwing somewhere, like this cannonball, and then you put everything in and see how far that flies. So that's peak power kind of event. But with sticks, we don't need that, maybe. Or do we? I don't know. Let's see. We have some considerations. Do we want to have high force and low speed, or high speed but low force, or something in between? We want to fight here on the lower right corner, because the blue dotted line is the power level which is needed for a good hit. And it is going to be lower than what you can maximally throw. So we have two choices. Either get like a very heavy stick, I don't know. I think the rules forbid too heavy sticks, but something like 10 kilos or 20 pounds or whatever. And then you swing that. It moves very slowly, but when it connects, you will score a good hit, just barely. But you will be slow. So we don't want that because of timing reasons I showed above. So we want to maximize the speed because we want to connect, but then we also want to get high enough power that the opponent will take the shot. So it's somewhere here. I don't have any numbers here, but somewhere here. So we want to err on the right-hand side of the picture. And this means that we have to optimize our training for speed as well, if we want to be able to use our speed. And it means we are not going to do maximum strength training with heavy weights. The reason for that is, although those will recruit all the muscles what we have, they won't be, that kind of movements won't be using the same kinetics or biomechanics than when we are throwing a shot. And because the max strength is trained with heavy weights, heavy resistance, the movement speed is very slow. So if you do this, you are not training your muscles to operate quickly. So this kind of strength work is okay for hypertrophy, although I wouldn't go for maximum strength work there. So just grow some muscle. And then as soon as possible, switch to high-speed training, maximum speed training with very light weights, preferably with your fighting stick. You don't need to have any special weights or training devices. Just take your stick, your shield, and put on your armor or maybe some weight vest simulating that, and you are really good to go. And in baseball, they did have done, they don't do anymore because it's quite clear, but they have done lots of research on how to get high speed, high bat velocity. And the truth is that they tried like heavy bats, light bats, combinations, strength training, whatever. The only thing that clicked was swing the bat something like 100 times per day, and you will get faster. So it was only like time on task. Many papers published, it's really clear. So once you have some muscles, then just make them fast. That's how you get fast. And you don't have to be this bodybuilder type. Too much muscle is not good. It's also more mass, which moves slower. So you have to find your way. I'm just giving general guidelines here. What people typically get wrong is they go to gym and start lifting heavy weights, and then they think they will get really fast. And that will work if you're a complete beginner who hasn't done any physical exercise. So one thing I want to make clear, if you haven't done any physical exercises, if you don't have a strength or muscles to speak of, then of course anything helps. But once you are past that point and once you have some muscle, then it doesn't make much sense to train with heavy weights anymore. If you want to be fast with your stick, you will have to train with your stick. I know, I did train kettlebell for a long time, many years. It didn't help at all with my stick speed. At all. No use. It didn't much make it worse either, but it was totally irrelevant. So I started thinking that, okay, what should I do instead? So okay, let's get strong. Didn't help. Didn't help at all. Okay, the yellow box, some things here. So the most important things for high speed is this muscle activation and nervous systems. I will give you a training plan for those. But it's good to keep in mind also the choice of techniques. This will be a separate topic. Muscles, how to grow muscles. You go to your YouTube and type how to get bigger muscles. You get like a zillion ways to do it. So I won't go into that. But basically you do some reps or repetitions to exhaustion with moderate weights. That's it. You can also grow your muscles with just bell work with your stick. If you go to exhaustion, which I discussed in the endurance lecture, which means that you start to slow down, you will also grow muscles. So you don't really have to lift any weights if you don't want to. Same thing with shield and stepping. Just go so long that you start to get this burning feeling. And then when you start to slow down, then you stop and you have done the set for the day and your muscles will grow. This is quite well known. Alternative is to use moderate weights. And this muscle tendon stiffness will be discussed as a separate topic, and also the technical efficiency for the movements. It's skilled training, but it has to be done with high speed. Slow work is not going to help you, because slow work is not using the same muscles what you need when you go fast. The only way to get those muscles into play is to go fast, because then your body will recruit all the necessary muscles for the fast movement. So if you do slow work, it's okay if you're learning a new technique, or if you want to refine something, or I don't know, warm up. Usually people learn new things slowly, but then you start speeding up as soon as possible and you keep speeding up. So slow work is not going to help. I'm sorry for the high speed. Okay. Now we are going to have a look at the actual training. So you have to endure this 45 minutes of yada yada. getting the beef now. So I've heard this slow is smooth is fast, but it's BS. For the reason because slow movements do not use the full muscle activation when you are using light resistance. And light resistance is what we want because we want to move very quickly. So if you train slow movements, you will be slow. Look at Tai Chi guys. Look at long distance runners and then compare how sprinters train or how those baseball batters train. They go full speed. Not in every session, but they go full speed. That's how they improve the speed. And this really has to go full speed, what you can do. Rough guideline is almost as fast as you can go. One thing, as fast as your technical ability allows. So don't break yourself. So if you have some bad technique, which you know is not working, don't do high speed movements with that because you will break yourself. So you have to increase the speed as you are able to keep the technique correct. So when you lose the technique, you will have to stop the speed training session. Usually that happens because you get tired or something goes wrong. You're not concentrating. So you have to keep the technique perfect when you go fast. And you will be doing just a few repetitions at a time. So maybe 5 shots at the bell. But the total for the day will be anything from 40 to 100. Just 100. Or maybe even just 40. Maybe sometimes even 20. The guideline here is, I will give you some ideas, but the idea is that start with maybe 40 and keep that up for 2 weeks. And if that seems to go okay, no pains anywhere, then you can maybe increase. Avoid fatigue. So if you get tired, that's the end of your speed training session. Because when your muscles are tired, they are not moving fast, and then you are no longer training fast movements, which is what we want. Also, do remember, because these are really quick stuff, your nervous system will get also fatigued. This is different from the muscles. So depending on who you are, it might be that your nerves get tired first, not your muscles. And this might come the next day. So you feel slow, that's how you get this, but it's not coming from the muscles. So how to track your progress? Take your cell phone, take video of yourself and count the frames. So how many frames it takes from standstill to complete the shot or whatever technique you are doing. If you are faster, that's progress. If you are getting slower, it's not progress. Okay, so this is really easy. And everybody should know how fast they are. And you can do single strikes, single steps, jumps, parries, or any combination of these, but that combination should only take a couple of seconds or even less to execute. So that we are not like doing long series here. Just a few things, 1, 2, 3 things maybe, and then that's your exercise. And I'm going to go into details next. If this feels easy, this kind of training, you are not going at your max speed. When you go with your max speed, you will see it's really tough. It will be really tough. You have to summon all your mental and physical power to go at max speed. So if this feels light, you're not doing it right. So I have to go faster. Okay. How often to train? Maybe 2 or 3 times per week. And I'm not going to recommend a lot of other training when you are training for speed. So you might want to go to a fighter practice, but I don't know. You can go there, but take it easy. So, and train fresh. So if you're really like exhausted from a fighter practice, that's not a good idea to train for speed the next day. So you have to be really fresh. Everything has to move. Warm up, otherwise you will get some tears. So this is kind of scary, but warm up somehow. You know what's best for you. All right, so we are going to be doing either 4 times 5 or 2 times 10 reps. So just 5 strikes, then a little pause, 5 strikes, pause, 5 strikes, pause, 5 strikes, pause, and that's a series. Or alternatively, 10 strikes, then a pause, and then 10 strikes. So you get this kind of 20 reps. And then you have a longer pause. And then you repeat that. The rest periods are there because we want to stay fresh. So it's okay to take longer rest periods. You have to be easy before you start the next series. And the volume, like I said before, up to 100 reps max per day. If you go higher, it is not going to help. This is quite enough, and you might end up having some stress injuries. So how long this will take? Maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks. So it's not like 1 year training. 3 to 6 weeks is maybe typical for different kinds of people. Then you will have the fastest shots, fastest barriers, fastest steps, what you can have compared to your conditioning at the time. So it's only few weeks time you get all this. You can be, when I started doing this, my strike speed was something like 0.5 seconds maybe. And 2 weeks later it was 0.3, and then it came down to 0.25, which is the same speed as Branos. 3 weeks, this kind of training. So this doesn't take like the whole year, but you should keep going for maybe 3 months to lock it in. So-called muscle memory, but this kind of thing. And what you will find out, so as a first thing to do, maybe just pick the onside shot to the head or flat snap or something like that, something simple, and test this. And what I was commented that after I did this training is like your strikes sound different. And they did, because they started to sound like strikes from Sean or Branos, those kind of gunshots. so you will definitely hear and feel the difference. And once you have this locked in, it does need some upkeep. So you will still have to do speed training sessions now and then to check that you are not losing it. Because if you're not doing any other speed work, then you have to do this protocol. But if you are able to do the high speed, let's say flat snaps to head, never mind the other shots, but just a flat snap. So if you concentrate on that in your fighter practice, every flat snap you do it very fast, then that's quite enough for the upkeep. And this is pretty much what you want. You want to get these high speed shots you have been training with the bell to your fighter practices to your tournaments. So you bring those in there, but one at a time. Don't take too much. Don't do all those 7 or 8 different shots in a one speed session. Pick one, and maybe flat snap to the head. It's the best anyway. So take out the leg, and try to keep that, because this is really, really difficult if you want to have the high speed. And also do a very limited number of similar slow movements. So I would advise against training flat snap then as a slow work item, because you are then training away your high speed shot. Don't do it. So if you train slow, you will be slow. Okay, this is about the last slide now. The same thing visualized. So you have two options. These are all you need. You don't need anything else. So one set is about 3 minutes. So during the first 30 seconds, you do 5 shots. Those take maybe 10 seconds to do. You don't have to do those 5 shots in a row. You can do 1, then have a small pause, and then 2, and so on. Or you can do them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're done. And then the rest of the time is just resting. Do nothing. You can sit or stand around quite still or wave your hands a little bit, but do nothing. And then when the 30 seconds is done, you do another 5 reps. And then you wait again, 5 reps and 5 reps. And then you have this 1 minute break. So you can program this. You can find any kind of timers to your cell phone and you can program this. So this is one set. And then you will repeat it 2 to 5 times. So this is a funny thing if you're doing this home. You can roll a die for the speed session of any day. So depending on the die, 6-sided die, you D6, you throw that and then it tells you how many times you repeat. Sometimes you have easy sessions, sometimes quite difficult, but most often you repeat 3 or 4 times. But when you are starting out the first 2 weeks, only repeat 2 times. So do this 2 times, so it's total of 40 shots. That's it. It's not much, right? But it's quite enough. When you get bored of that, you can try 10 shots in a row. But then when you have done those, you will use the rest of the time. This time it's 60 seconds, so as a break. So don't do this 10 shots during the 60 seconds. Do them like 1, 2, 3, 4, so maybe in 15 seconds or 20 seconds or something like that. And then just rest for the rest of the time because you want to be fresh. Then repeat that. And then you have once again the longer break. And you can also do the upper set and then have a break and then do the lower set. So you can mix this as well. So it's a little bit depends on how you feel about it. So the lower one is more difficult because you're doing more reps in a row. So if you really want to start with the upper one. This is what I did. And I can post to the Facebook some links to this exercise. So how it looks when I do the Bell training. And I also did measure the times. I have that picture somewhere floating around. So I did measure how long it takes for my strike, but also the return of the stick back to the starting position. So that's how I know how fast I was. And that's it. There you have it. So this just one slide is your training plan. Are you scared already? What do you think? Sounds crazy. Can't work.
No, that's really interesting and really useful, I think.
Yeah, tried it out. It works. It works too well. And the only limitation is your own genetics, basically. So there are people who can't be fast. So they just can't get fast, no matter what you try. But the chances that you are one of those people is quite small. So it's more likely to do with what you have done before. So if you have done slow movements, you are going to be slow to start with. But then if you take a video of yourself and see how you improve, how your times improve over the weeks, you can start to tell that are you able to improve. And you can start to see that how much you are able to improve. And of course, there are lots of technical things to find out, but this is for you to find out. So how the flat snap is done with high speed, what has to be taken into account, I won't go into those because I will discuss that as an example later on as a separate topic. How to maximize the flat snap speed, for example. There are different ways to do it, and that's really technical, but I did it, so I'm gonna describe it now for you quite well, depending on, there are two ways to do it, as I understand it, Branno's way and then maybe the Sean way. So which way you want to go. But that's about technical aspects. This speed training protocol applies to anything you want to choose as your strike technique, but also parry technique and also movement technique. So the sprinters, the 100-meter sprinters, they use something similar like this, but they have longer breaks because they're taking something like 50 steps, maybe not so many. So the breaks they are having, as you can see, when you go down from 5 to 10, if you go to 30 and then 50, you will have to also increase the break times. But the basic idea is the same. They have the same kind of training plan. They don't just do 100 reps, maybe they do, I don't know, usually they run a few times, maybe up max 5 times to 100 meters. And that's it. So they do maybe a little bit more reps or steps, but the idea is the same. And they always start fresh. And the baseball batters, same thing. They are not doing those 100 shots in a row, so that they get tired. They take breaks. They do a few and then have a break and do a few. So this is the whole idea. And if you want to try this also in your fighter practice, you can do it, but you have to tell your opponent that I'm gonna do 5 attacks, and then we'll have a break of 1 minute or something, so that I can be fresh for the next 5 attacks. So you can use this as a training plan in a fighter practice as well. Okay, so if you do this, you should have a speed as good as you can get, and then endurance is just about repeating this many times. That's it. Okay, and next topic maybe after summer is about technical skills and pattern recognition, maybe a little bit also movement efficiency. So how to get technical skills. So we have the movements, but then we have the brain unit and the visual that has to be connected to these movements, motorics. So I'll discuss that next. Hopefully you will find it interesting as well. Okay, this is it. I have to finish now. Any final questions? Because if not,
I have one question.
yes, please.
If you are, say, working on some new shot, or so something that you're going slow on to practice the mechanics, and then a different shot that you're working on the speed for, would you say it was okay to train both of those things on the same day, or would you recommend splitting up that training?
It's okay. Of course, you have to think of it this way. So usually if you train on the same day, you should train the most taxing work first. Usually it's the speed work. So you could do in the speed work first, either in the morning or as the first thing in a training session. And then later in the session, you would do the slower work, because you will most likely get more exhausted with this slow work for a long time. So get your speed stuff in first, and then do the slow stuff next. And the key point is only that if you're training fast flat snap, don't use that in the slow training. So or any similar movement. So if you're training fast onside, you can train slow offside. It shouldn't interfere. Or if you are training fast stepping, then you can stand in a one place, but try to avoid slow stepping. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Something like that. But it's really about how to set up the overall training plan, and I think different people have different ideas about that. Usually what you do is you learn your basic techniques separately as slow ones, and then you try to combine those. So for example, with like this, that you learn parry and counterattack style. So your opponent will strike you onside to head. So you learn first like how to parry that and counter. And then your opponent throws an offside. So you'll learn how to parry the offside and counter. And then maybe a leg shot, parry that and counter as separate things. But you are still kind of slow. But you first learn to do all those three things. And then your opponent will start speeding up. So the strikes will come in faster. They are still isolated until you hit this kind of a okay speed level. And then your opponent will randomly throw onside, offside leg. You don't know what's coming. And you have to then maybe go slow again so that you can react correctly to what is coming. This is the pattern recognition step. And then you start to speed up this kind of random attacks. You speed up, speed up, speed up. And at that point in time, you are okay. You should only then start to train high-speed shots, counter shots, because you know the techniques and you have the pattern recognition in place, and then you can start to react correctly. So you can enhance that at home, doing the high-speed parry and counterattack really quickly at home at bell. And then when you go to fighter practice, you have the correct reaction, and then you just repeat what you did at the bell. But if you don't have the pattern recognition in place, if you can't react correctly what's coming at you, I would avoid the speed training. So this is why this is this kind of sequence that we are coming from the wrong way. So endurance is the last thing you train. Speed is second to last. But it depends on what you want. So if you want to first train really quick flat snap as your only technique, you can totally do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend to get some kind of base fighting tactics and techniques first, then how to do those safely, how to learn the pattern recognition, the correct movements, and only then start getting to speed using those techniques. And then later you can pick more stuff and add to the package. But yes, basically what you said. So train separately an old technique for speed, and then separately a new technique with slower speed, and then increase the speed for the new technique as you are able.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, one comment. So I also shoot the Japanese samurai longbow, and it's really fast movement. It's 30 milliseconds, so it's 10 times faster than what we are throwing our shots, 10 times faster. And there it's really critical that you don't do anything funny. learn slow techniques with your arms. So that's maybe the ultimate thing, because you have to do physical work during those 30 milliseconds. So it's not like European archery. It's a different thing, which makes it a little bit difficult. It's going to preload the bow, so you can twist it and push it and do it. And then when the shot goes, you still have to operate with your muscles to get it done. So their only recommendation is always train with high speed, which means shooting the actual bow. They don't recommend any other training. But there, of course, you have only one technique to train, one shot. All right, shall we close this now? Thanks for joining. So, thank you for the questions. And you can reach me through Facebook if you want to ask more or anything. I try to put the links to the videos, how the training actually looks, so you can have a look. Okay.
Cool. Thank you for the presentation.
No problem.
Yeah, that was cool. I especially loved all these little diagrams and tables and stuff. Yeah, for the clarity.
Yeah, I tried to put some in, but sorry, maybe not was the best job I could do, but
Yeah, they were great. That's what
yeah.
Take a compliment, man.
yeah, I can take it, but I think we need some way to discuss, for example, the timing.
Yeah.
In fighting, and this is my first attempt, because it's really interesting topic for me, at least.
Yeah.
It's really important, but some kind of language how to discuss that.
Come and join the fencers. We have lots of language for that. Some of it even repeatable in polite conversation.
Has anybody done this kind of timing diagrams there? Do you know?
Not diagrams that I can think of. Everybody just kind of tells it by word of mouth, kind of thing, or on video by demonstrating.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I like this idea of having the diagrams.
Yeah, because I came. Well, that's one thing in that, but it's this creation of the time window in which your strike goes in, and that seems to be this one big aspect of how to hit something. and it's really got to do that.
With anything, with any martial art.
Many ways to create that window, but it's still imperative that you understand that you need to create the window somehow. And if you can't create the window for your strike to go in time, not in like a physical space, but that's also needed, but in time, then you can't hit anything. So, and I think the technical selection and also the physical ability of yourself will greatly affect that, all the possibilities how to create that window, and the new techniques what you are using, it's easier or harder. And I can see that Duke Sean, for example, is he's still, even though it looks like that it's like a very fast shots and those are really fast shots, but there are some minor details if you look in slow motion that he also creates a little bit extra time window for the shot to go in, and that's really funny, even though he's not in a physical contact to the opponent. So this is the mind game, one aspect of, I know as a fencer you probably know all about it.
It's universal to all the martial arts, I think.
Yeah, so it's, some people would call it cheating. It's not fair.
There's no such thing as a fair fight in real life.
No, I once saw a Japanese technique. It was this from Okinawa. So you have this paddle, boat paddle. And one way to create this time window is to pick up some sand from the ground and with the boat paddle and throw it to the face and eyes of your opponent.
Yeah. I think the worst one, not worst in the sense of being bad technique, but just the sort of, oh God, how could anybody fall for that? But you do. I've seen in the SCA is when Master Paul will often do a thing where, or used to anyway, where you'll be fighting him or fencing him, and he'll suddenly just pause and go, oh, look over there. And 9 people at a time will at least once.
Yeah.
Well, you've created a good time window there.
Yeah. And it's a good topic actually. It would be to discuss with a lot of people, like
Yeah, it would be cool to have like a class or session about that.
Yeah. Of course, it's easier when we are in the same physical space, so it can be shown to the audience. But yeah, definitely, the fighters here in Arimet, so they are not very good with this. And of course, it's difficult because we are talking about fractions of a second anyway. And I think most of us here still struggle with this very basic timing. So very few are able to parry and strike at the same time with the stick and a shield, for example. So they don't have the physical capabilities or the pattern recognition speed and technique selection in place yet. So then it's too early to start to, well, of course we can discuss always, but
Well,
all right.
I found it definitely helps to at least introduce as a throwaway line, the concept early to new fighters. We were doing that last week at practice here, just saying, oh, this will, this is advanced and it'll come later, but most martial arts are in fencing, the ideal is to do your attack and your defense in the same motion or whatever, but we'll come back to that. And hopefully that, at least just saying that will stick somewhere in the subconscious and help bring it along, we hope.
Yeah, it's the first thing I teach if there's anybody new.
Yeah.
So how to parry with the shield and strike your opponent at the same time. So I usually teach that first, and then go with something else, because it's the whole thing in there in a single motion. Okay, I have to go now. I'm really sorry. I would love to discuss for hours on end, but maybe it's better to do that in some event or maybe a different session, because I really have to go now. So thanks for joining, and this hopefully was recorded. So I'll put the link somewhere when I have it, so you can share it to somebody who is interested but couldn't join today. So with that, have a nice summer, everybody. I'm starting my holidays on Friday, and it's midsummer here in Finland. So really nice weather coming, and lots of beer and stuff, the whole usual Arimetsa thing. So,
Enjoy.
Yeah, enjoy you too, and talk to you later.
Weather and
So,
beer, I like to sound of that.
Yeah.
Where are my tickets to Finland?
Hopefully not too many mosquitoes, but we'll see. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Strauss, bye.
Okay, you lost me with the mosquitoes right there.
No, because there's a lot of